everybody. Thank you for being with us here today. So we're going to be speaking a little bit about what is complete language immersion. So every time that I receive a call at the school or I have some parents scheduling a tour to come and see the facility, the first thing they ask is, how are you guys a bilingual preschool? How do you teach the kids to speak both English and Spanish? How does complete language immersion work? So, complete language immersion, different from bilingual education, which is probably what most of us or most of you did in your past, in school, at college, university. When you have a bilingual education, you normally work on vocabulary. For example, you go to school, you take an English or a Spanish class, and they'll be like, okay, dog, perro, cat, gato, house, casa. So you have all of this vocabulary, but you don't know what to do with it. Instead, complete language immersion works with students spending at least 50% of their time completely learning in a second language. That way it's in a meaningful and real-world way. We do this by providing them with culture from Spanish-speaking countries, art, music, and of course, significant experiences. So what is our ultimate goal? We don't just want our students at Echo Kids to be bilingual. We want them to achieve biliteracy. What does this mean? It means that they don't only understand or kind of have the vocabulary in Spanish, which is the case. It means that they can actually understand Spanish, speak Spanish, write Spanish, and read in Spanish.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Isn't that the same as being bilingual?
The difference is when you're bilingual, there's two ways of being bilingual. You can be either an active or you can be passive. If you're passive, it means that you can mainly understand the second language and you can read it. But when you're active, it means that you can actually speak it and write it, which is a much more complex action in the second language. So that is our goal here. We're working on reading and writing skills in both English and Spanish, as well as math skills in both English and Spanish. We don't just want them to be able to, they go somewhere and they understand Spanish or they can kind of defend themselves. No, we want them to actually think in a second language. So what are the benefits? According to various studies, of course, there are a lot of benefits for our brains when we are actually multilingual or bilingual. One of the first benefits is that it activates different parts of the brain, and in children's case, it gives them like a cognitive boost. Whenever they're engaging in an activity, they have different ways of thinking than a monolingual child. What does this mean? They have more of a divergent thinking, they can recognize patterns more easily, they can make better decisions, they can solve problems in different ways because they have different ways of thinking. They don't just see things from one angle. And finally, the good thing about having a complete language immersion is that you actually have a holistic grasp of the second language. This meaning that you can actually, on a social and emotional level, be connected with the language. It's not just that, if you're reading a book in Spanish or you're watching a movie in Spanish, you can actually connect to it. You can feel the movie, you can feel a song that's in Spanish. You're not just decoding and understanding the words. So, how do we do it at Echo Kids? Our students are engaged throughout the whole day in a 100% Spanish-speaking environment. This means as soon as the kids walk in through the door, we greet them in Spanish. Buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? We try to talk to the parents in Spanish as well. All of the activities are made in Spanish. Circle time, which is practically the most important part of the day, where we're reading books, we're singing songs, we're having discussions about different topics. All of this is done in Spanish. They get to actually share ideas with their teachers and their classmates in Spanish. Also, we work on values in Spanish. We work on learning through play because, I don't know if most of you know it, but when children are young, between the ages of 1 and 3, the only way, or let's say the most significant way in which they can learn is when they learn through play. It won't just work for a 2-year-old, a toddler, to be sitting down and writing in a book or just coloring like a drawing. No, they actually need to play. They need to use their different skills, social skills. They speak with their friends, creativity, imagination, all of this in a second language, which is Spanish in this case. We give them the social skills so that they can actually defend themselves, talk with other people, adults, children their own age, their peers. And of course, as I said previously, we expose them to the art and culture. When we do activities at school, we try to enrich their culture. We do Venezuelan traditions, Mexican traditions, Colombian traditions. We'll sing traditional songs to them. That way, we have multicultural children. They're not just bilingual, they're multicultural. So how do we do this? As I said, we work on reading and writing skills in both languages, particularly when they're younger. In the first 3 classrooms, when they're 1, 2, and 3, we work mainly in Spanish. Once they go on to VPK, we start to put a little bit more of English into it so they can be prepared when they get to kindergarten and elementary school. We work on math skills, scientific thinking, and social and emotional skills. We teach them empathy, self-esteem, all of this in Spanish, so as I said, they can actually grasp onto it on that level. And so, one of my favorite quotes is this one from Flora Lewis. She says that learning another language is not only learning different words for the same things, but learning another way to think about things. Thank you. Questions that you would like to ask?
I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding kids with the delays in cognitive skills and language skills, would you recommend this strategy for them?
Well, specifically for children, a lot of experts have said kids that have maybe some type of language delay, they sometimes recommend that they're only working in one language. However, even if this is good for them because they are not, put into thinking in 2 different languages at the same time, they do manage with time to adapt both of those languages. Maybe they won't be as fluent in both languages, depending, on their delay or their vocabulary skills or language skills. There's a lot of factors that can come into it, but they normally, get to sort it all out. And what you were saying, excuse me, on a cognitive level, also we've had a lot of teachers and scientists and researchers say that it sometimes happens with multilingual or bilingual students. They tend to be a little bit more delayed, like in reading or in writing or in math. It's pretty normal and that worries parents a lot, but the thing that I can tell you is as they grow older, they get to sort it all out. This just happens because their brain works so much faster. They think in both English and Spanish. They think of different ways of solving problems, and that's why sometimes it takes them a little bit longer to get to reach their goal or reach their achievement. But at the end, as they get older, they sometimes even surpass their peers because of their bilingual, knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. I don't know if there's any
I have a
questions.
question.
Yes.
What would you consider is the right approach at home when it comes to, like, our kids want to watch Disney Channel, Discovery Kids, and these are English-based networks.
Okay.
Do you consider that we encourage it or discourage it?
I believe nothing should be discouraged. There should always be a balance. I believe, I try to encourage Spanish-speaking families to actually speak Spanish at home. I mean, they're in the States, the native language is English, they're constantly surrounded by English, books are in English, movies are in English, TV's in English, their friends speak in English. I think it's all about balance. If you are going to be working with your kids in Spanish at home and you're just going to be, okay, we're not speaking English at home, we're just doing Spanish, that is okay, but I wouldn't recommend discouraging them from watching the TV shows that they like in English. Maybe sometimes we could be like, oh, let's watch a little bit in Spanish or a little bit in English. This way they won't start to refuse to get that second language. It happens with a lot of kids. They sometimes tend to get embarrassed about that second language, or they're like, oh no, I don't want to speak that. But it's there. It's there. You need to be very delicate with them so that they don't feel like any kind of,
Yeah, reject.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Any other questions? Thank you.